started here. Welcome, everybody. Feel free to, like I said, say hello in the chat along the way. We're going to have an opportunity to ask questions at the end, but you can always put a question in the Q&A at the bottom. But today I'm super excited to welcome you to Ask the Expert, July 2025 edition. We are here to talk about love, romantic relations, intimacy, and aphasia. We are so proud and excited to have Dr. Amanda Steed and very soon Dr. Allie Reed joining us for this topic. These are two people that I respect greatly in our field, not just because of their academic and professional, but just who they are as people and how supportive and engaged they've become in the area of aphasia. So I'm going to tell you, if you haven't figured out, even with my old logo, it's a new day with the NAA. At the end of June, we launched our brand new, and I emphasize brand, our new website, and we're just super excited. We have worked for years to really put the ideas in place that you guys have shared with us. It is what we've heard from the community, and we hope that we can shine the light on things that you're doing. The other day, I was able to talk to the founder, Dr. Martha Sarno, and there's a great little page on her on our website. And one of the things she said to me is it's kind of like the authority with a hug. And I'm like, this is perfect, the authority with a hug. So be sure to check it out. If you haven't already, play around, go look at all of the different sections. We are adding things. So there's a little area on our newsletter that shows you where you can share feedback. If there's a glitch or something's not working, please let us know. If there's an addition you have, an idea. The other thing we wanted to share is that lots of people have told us, me especially since I started at the NAA, when is Speaking Out coming back? Speaking Out is a conference that is unique, amazing. It is part of my history as a speech pathologist and my family who all attended. It is for people with aphasia and their families. And if you see any speech therapists or aphasia professors, it's because we get to hang out with you. So we will be providing new information on that. We right now have the flyer, and we'll be sharing how you can put in videos, presentations, anything. This year it will be virtual, and next year it'll be in-person options. Okay, so for Ask the Expert, you all have been here before. If you haven't, we have questions and comments at the bottom. You'll see a Q&A. If you have a question about tonight's topic, put it in the Q&A. Also, feel free to say hi or make a comment in the chat section. All of our speakers always need that encouragement, like, we hear you, you're doing great, so feel free to do that. Remember that we will try to answer as many questions as we can about tonight's topic. And we do try to stick to the topic. If you have questions about other things with aphasia, please call or please email answers@aphasia.org. We have a cool little new area of how people can get in touch with the NAA too. So, and then really join us next week on Wednesday, and both of you are invited if you choose to. It's Wednesday at 12 noon to join the After the Expert conversation group. And we do that because we always felt like there was more to say and people wanted to join the conversation. And because this is a webinar, you're watching, but you don't get that same kind of interaction that you could get next week on Wednesday at 12 noon. The After the Expert conversation group was the third Wednesday of every month after the Ask the Expert, and you can scan the QR code, or you can visit our website at the events to learn more about that. Another cool thing we've added is you are able, as a professional, to get one professional development hour, one PDH, towards ASHA certification maintenance for speech pathologists if you watch the entire Ask the Expert live. If you do, the certificate will be shared at the end of the in the chat. And if there's any technological problems, email me and I will be able to get it for you. All right, so I'm so excited. I have a pleasure of introducing Amanda Steed. Amanda is a professor of speech-language pathology at Pacific University in Oregon. She specializes in adult neurogenic communication disorders and has additional expertise in end-of-life care and healthcare simulation. Love, love, love. Dr. Steed worked closely with the Aphasia Network, a nonprofit supporting individuals with aphasia and their families, and led their signature couples retreat for many years. Her work integrates evidence-based education, practical and compassionate care, and community-based supports to serve her community. We also have the honor of having Allie Reed join us. Allie, as many of you know, is probably have seen her from Aphasia Recovery Connection and Graphica and Virtual Connections. So Allie is a speech language pathologist and a senior online communities manager at Lingraphica. She specializes in adult neurogenic communication disorders and has 12 years of experience facilitating virtual conversation and support groups for people with aphasia. She's currently pursuing her PhD in health science through Nova Southeastern University, where she researches the impact that aphasia has on marriages and romantic relationships. She's a strong proponent of the life participation approach to aphasia, and she's passionate about developing opportunities for functional communication and community re-engagement. So I'd like to welcome you both, and I am going to scoop my PowerPoint off of here so that you guys can start to share yours. I will be available and hanging out here, but enjoy this wonderful presentation.
Thanks so much, Mara, for that beautiful introduction. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right. Amanda, can you see this okay? Yes. Okay, great. All right. So let's talk about love, romantic relationships, intimacy, and aphasia. That's what we're all here for tonight. So Mara already did an amazing job of introducing us. I'm Allie Reed. We also have Dr. Amanda Stead here as well, and we'll be hosting your webinar tonight. So here's what's on the agenda. I'm going to share first about some changes to relationships after aphasia. And then Amanda will share about communication breakdowns. I'll talk about intimacy and sexuality after aphasia. And then Amanda will round us out with lots of tips and resources for maintaining connection with your loved one. We'll have plenty of time for questions at the end as well. So please do put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A, or hold them until the end because we'd love to answer all of your questions. And before we get started, I just want to share that this is a safe space. What happens here stays here. You do not have to share. You can just observe and take in all of this information. But unfortunately, the topic of romantic relationships post-aphasia is really not talked about very often. So if nothing else, we want you to have this information presented in an aphasia-friendly manner. But please do not feel the need to share. And if you do share, please know that it stays in this Zoom room, okay? All right, y'all, so let's talk about changes to relationships after aphasia. And some of this might sound familiar to you, and some of this might be new information, but we'll see what resonates. So first, I want to talk about why this isn't addressed by healthcare providers. So healthcare professionals see relationships and sex intervention as a topic that requires specialized training that they don't have, even though relationships and sex are normal, everyday parts of our life that are very important to quality of life. And yet healthcare professionals kind of do a, ooh, I don't want to go there. And that's the problem. Another problem is no one knows whose job it is. So should your PT bring it up? Should your physician talk to you about it? Should a nurse screen for it? How about speech therapist, OT, marriage and family therapist? And unfortunately, what ends up happening is no one addresses it. So now we're kind of all sitting here and we know it's a problem, but no one wants to bring it up. And that means that it's put on the patient or their spouse to bring it up. And that's just really unfortunate that we, as healthcare professionals, put you in that position and we don't provide you with education or provide you with resources right off the bat when we know this is something that you're probably affected by. So let's talk about some common changes to relationships after aphasia. And I also want to pause by saying these slides are going to be available to you afterwards. So I know there's a lot of text on this slide. Don't feel like you have to remember it all. We'll have it available for you after. But here's some big things that come up in relationships after aphasia. Changes to identities and roles. I used to be this person. I used to be able to do this for my spouse, and now I can't. Maybe not feeling romantic anymore. Maybe it feels more like a patient and caregiver type of relationship and less like a husband and wife or spouse and spouse. A couple of other really big ones: grief, guilt, loss. There's been a huge loss that comes with stroke and brain injury and aphasia. Another thing that comes along with it is changes in your body image, changes to the way your body moves, changes to the way you feel about your body, self-esteem, and all of that blends into changes to physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, and sexual intimacy. So there's a lot going on here. Lots of different things that can contribute to this. But if you're looking at this list and you're thinking to yourself, yeah, this sounds familiar. This sounds like what I've experienced with my partner. Please know this is common. This is normal. You are not alone. This is what happens to relationships after aphasia. Now, another thing that is unfortunate that happens after aphasia is couples know that their relationship feels different now, but they don't really know how to address it with each other or with healthcare providers. So I put this picture here of an elephant in the room. It is the elephant in the room. It's, ooh, we all feel this thing and no one's talking about it. And something that I've heard from people with aphasia and care partners is the person with aphasia will say, well, now my loved one, my spouse, is doing so much. They're paying the bills and they're doing the groceries and they're doing the cleaning and they're doing the cooking and they're doing the driving. I don't want to put another thing on them. And then the care partner says, my loved one just had a stroke. Their whole lives changed. They are unable to communicate now. They have these body changes. They're going through so much grief and so much loss. I don't want to put the pressure of the relationship on them now, too. So we really have this elephant in the room that no one is talking about. So now I'm going to break it over to Amanda so that she can talk about communication breakdowns.
Hello, everyone. Good to see you this evening. Allie will be my slide clicker. Here we go. So, one of the things we know about relationships, even before aphasia, is that there are communication challenges and communication breakdowns. And we do not always have a good practice of being very transparent, asking for what we need, or working through difficult problems in romantic relationships or partnerships already. So when we add aphasia to that, of course, we have an acceleration of the communication breakdowns. We know that with aphasia, we will have a change in communication. And communication is one of the foundations for intimacy, both emotional and leading into other things. but this can change closeness and connectedness. We also know that when we have these communication breakdowns, it can really cause a sense of isolation, frustration, loneliness. It can compound some of the other challenges that you may be experiencing and just navigating the world generally. And it can also make it really hard to make difficult decisions, manage conflict, and move out of a situation that actually requires a lot of sort of skills we didn't always have before something changed in our communication. All right, Allie. So we've come up with a few tips. And one of the things I learned after many years of running an aphasia couples retreat is that a lot of the challenges that partners had before aphasia follow them into having a new sort of identity. So some of these are just things we should probably all be doing anyways. But for our spouses or partners or folks interested in engaging or re-engaging in the dating scene or romantic and relationships, one of the things is thinking about having a signal for your partner to think about when they're going to jump in to support you with your communication. This can help reduce that frustration. Using the communication strategies you use in other sort of settings and other situations to support having conversations with your partner, trying to take a deep breath, stay calm, and reset. We know that can be difficult in romantic partnerships where feelings can run high, but we also know this will help your communication as best as it can. Really embracing that sense of advocacy for yourself, telling your partner what's important to you, remembering that your partner cares about all the things you think, even in the context of a lot of change. So tell them what you need, even about romantic relationships and intimacy. And really practice reminding yourself that you are lovable and desirable and you are not a burden. Self-talk is a really positive way to move forward. So, for our partners without aphasia, you'll probably see this advice and think, oh, okay, I've seen this before. And that's right, because it applies to romantic relationships and intimacy. Wait for your partner's signal before you're jumping in to support them. Give them time. We know that when polled, folks with aphasia say the number one thing they want from folks around them is more patience. You also can take a deep breath and reset and try again if a conversation is getting difficult. We're still going to use our communication strategies with our partner, even when we're talking about issues with our relationship or challenges we want to work through. Continuing to support your partner and maintaining their independence and recognizing their competency as an adult and desires and taking care of yourself, right? Happy individuals lead to happier partnerships. All right, Allie.
All right, back to me. So let's talk about intimacy and sexuality after aphasia. And I want to define this word intimacy a little bit because I think many people, when they hear intimacy, they think sex. And that is one type of intimacy, but there's also emotional intimacy, that connection you feel with your partner. There's physical intimacy, which can just be holding hands or cuddling or hugging or kissing. Doesn't have to be sexual intimacy. So there's lots of different ways to feel intimate and close and connected with your partner, even if it doesn't involve that sexual act, okay? So these two things are really complex, really complicated. Let's look at this circle here. We've got cognition and attention, being able to attend to something for a prolonged amount of time. Sensation, the feeling in your body, the feeling in your arms and legs and your skin. Relationships, what we're all here for tonight. Sexual ideation, being able to think about having sex or wanting to have sex, or what does it look like now after stroke and aphasia or TBI and aphasia? Being able to think about that. Communication, all familiar with that here. Nonverbal exchange. So maybe a little glance you give your partner, or a smirk, or even a gesture that can show them that you're, really feeling them in the moment, feeling their energy, or feeling connected to them. Emotions. Tons of emotions when it comes to intimacy and sexuality. And then physical acts. So again, how we use our bodies to connect with our spouse or partner. Now, I want to quiz you all. Let's look at these bubbles, and I want you to find one that aphasia would not affect. Uh-oh. Stroke, aphasia, TBI, that affects all of the bubbles here. So as you can imagine, intimacy and sexuality are already complex. And then now we add aphasia, stroke, TBI, PPA onto this complexity. Whoa, got a lot going on. So how does aphasia impact sexual relationships? Difficulty communicating desires. What do you desire sexually now? What did you desire sexually before? Changes to or difficulty with intimacy initiation. Now it might be hard to say, hey, you want to try something tonight? Or let's take this to the bedroom. It might be hard to say those things now. Reduced emotional intimacy. We've had a lot of chemical changes to the brain, and that means that your emotions might look different than they did before your brain was injured. As I mentioned earlier, changes to those identities, feeling like patient and a caregiver, or a child and a parent, because now maybe you require more care than you did before. And so it just changes the romantic feeling you have with your partner. And that also bleeds over into changed roles during intimacy, especially if you've been with your partner for a long time. We get into intimacy routines, right? And we know this person does this usually, or this person treats me this way, or this person likes this. And now those things have changed. And another thing I really want to hone in on tonight is changed body image, self-esteem, feelings of being desirable, and that comparison that you make about yourself now versus then, before. This is a really huge part of what we're talking about. You may have heard before sayings like, you have to love yourself before you can love someone else. And that's really important here. Stroke, aphasia, TBI, PPA, these things turn your worlds upside down. And maybe now you're feeling like, oh, I don't like the way I look in the mirror. I don't like the way my body moves. I don't feel sexy. I don't feel pretty. I don't feel handsome anymore. And how can you change that negative self-talk and those feelings towards yourself so that you can start to feel desirable and worthy of love again? So here's the good news. Most couples affected by aphasia still have sexual desire for each other. They just aren't talking about it. Again, this is that elephant in the room. So that's what we're here to talk about tonight. I'm going to pass it back to Amanda, and she's going to load you up with some tips and resources.
Hello again, folks. Here we go. So, the biggest barrier that I have experienced in supporting couples reconnecting is reminding them that they are still, in fact, a couple. And that sounds so simple. And this is something that happens to lots of couples out there in the world for all different reasons. But it's the intentional focus, the intentional act of saying, I'm your partner, we need to be a couple, and then following through on that. So spending time together where you're not talking about stroke, where you're not practicing, where you're not being a caregiver, really just spending time together doing other enjoyable activities to foster a different type of connection and to decenter that focus on maybe something that has changed and get back to the heart of a relationship. So, affirmations have been shown time and time and time again out there in our literature to actually be really beneficial, again, for all people. And what Allie was saying is you have to believe in your worth, in your beauty, your desirability, your roles in order often to make yourself available to connect with your partner and practicing affirmations. So, looking in the mirror, looking in your cell phone camera, really closing your eyes and focusing and saying, I am lovable. I'm learning to love my new body. I am not a burden. And maybe at the beginning, it feels a little bit like not real, not authentic, but that's the point. The more you say it and the more you intend to believe it with your heart, you do see movement in these self perceptions. So try it. Go ahead and try it this evening if you want, or this weekend. So, tips for physical intimacy. Maybe it's just not as easy as it was before to, make those initiations or make those moves. Schedule it. Maybe that doesn't sound very romantic, but then we know, and everybody knows, there is a time where we're going to intentionally focus on connecting with each other. Also, make a plan before you get into an intimate situation so that you know how it's going to proceed, what signals you're going to use, what the sort of negotiation points are. So you're not caught in a quandary or a question of what's going to happen next. Now, I love this third one because I personally think that everybody is actually terrible about this, even when nothing has changed in the relationship. Ask the question. When? How? What? How can I connect with you? And you'll find that the act of talking about it, that transparency, will help bridge some of that intimacy gap for you. Think about a nonverbal signal, right? And I'm guessing a lot of you have had nonverbal signals even before something changed. So think about that and being really explicit and been like, hey, when I do this signal, this is what I'm thinking about. And think about including scripts and ways we're going to go through. So, what phrases can we include? What things can we practice to help you feel like you have more language and communication for intimacy, for romance? Not just the coffee shop, not the grocery store, not the doctor, but for your partner and for intimacy. And you know what, y'all? Even though what Allie said in the beginning is everyone is saying, I don't know, is this my job? Talk to them anyways. Say, hey, I need support. Maybe it's your PT, your SLP, your OT, your physician. Say, I need help. If not you, then who? Because we know they're not going to bring it up. So unfortunately, we're going to be the ones to bring our problems to them. This is a wonderful practice, and I love a good practice built on science. What we know is that if you give someone a 20-second hug, and that is a long hug, y'all, that is a very long hug, it actually reduces cortisol, which is the stress sort of vibes in your brain, and increases oxytocin, which is your love feelings. And so just that act of like a really long hug can help your body and your brain really re-engage. So maybe this is how we start a difficult conversation. Maybe this is how we initiate things, is just giving your brain a chance to get on board with where you're at. So we're going to practice a 20-second hug, and we're going to practice a 6-second kiss. And if someone wants to pull out of that hug at 15 seconds, you can say, nope, science says 5 more seconds. Hold on. Here's another thing we can try. You can set the goal. So if you have been disengaged or have a really altered romantic partnership than you have had previously, maybe we're at the very bottom of this ladder right now. So we're not having a lot of intimacy in our relationship. We've had a lot of role change. We haven't figured out how to start. And then maybe instead of immediately saying, I want to be on this top ladder, I want to fix everything right now back, maybe we just do a little goal. You know, I don't spend a lot of time physically touching my partner. Let's try to touch more. Let's try to kiss more. Let's try to hold hands. Let's try my 20-second hug. So thinking about where you are on this scale, no intimacy, sort of light physical intimacy. Maybe you haven't engaged in sex since your partner has had their stroke or got aphasia. Maybe it's just talking about it more regularly. And maybe you're at the top of this ladder and things are going really well. But think about these little baby steps instead of trying to go all the way up this ladder. So, most of all, aphasia does not have to define your relationship. It can contribute to your strength. Aside from the stroke, think about the most difficult thing you two have navigated together. You got through that. You can get through this too. Your commitment to your partner and your intentionality to fix this, that's really the first step, right? Is saying, you know what? I'm going to try something different. That's the first step, y'all. So what we've done in here, and don't worry about all these little tiny words because you'll get the slides afterwards, but there's a couple of books here that may be useful. One on thinking about your relationship when your spouse has a stroke. So this is for care partners. Then there's this really excellent book it's called The Ultimate Guide to Sex and Disability. And this really covers a whole wide range of things that may or may not apply, but it is a really accessible and liberating and solutions-oriented book. There's also a couple of really wonderful websites and articles here. The two I've shared on here are really specifically about intimacy sort of later in life, which we've also decided is a thing we don't want to talk about. So here's the wonderful resources. And then there's a couple of more links just about intimacies specifically. So what does a sex therapist do? And the National Stroke Association actually has a pretty excellent website on sex and intimacy after stroke more broadly. So this is just another resource for you to check out. All right, y'all, just can't thank you enough for attending. And now we will jump into some of your questions. Look at that camera.
And somehow I got the camera back on. Hi, y'all. So, oh my gosh, it was so much information. and so accessible. I love how you all presented that. We are getting questions. Make sure you, if you do have a question, put it in the Q&A. That I'd love to see if we can get your thoughts and input on. Was also thinking that besides all of these resources that both these wonderful people have shared, we will put them in on our YouTube channel, in that playlist under Ask the Expert. But we have a new section on our events calendar, which allows us to post resources that are specific to the event. So we'll be doing that. And then I would love you guys to maybe look at putting together a blog post that we can put on the site so that we can continue to share this information. So
Absolutely.
again, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to ask the question. We have 3 or 4 questions already lined up. So somebody had asked a question about if you aren't right now in a relationship. So I have lots of friends and family. I have no kids, and I'll never have kids. For now, I'm not ready to have a girlfriend, but sooner or later, I would like to have somebody special with me. Are there any statistics, or is it just luck? The fact that someone wants to be with someone like me who's had a stroke or aphasia. Take it away.
Well,
Go ahead.
what I will say is that I can't quote the numbers specifically because I think even quoting the numbers for folks without changes or disability or aphasia is really difficult to pin down. What I can say from my experience and working with a number of individuals who were in similar positions, interested in re-engaging in the dating world or finding a partner when they didn't have a partner, is that we can acknowledge that there are additional barriers here, right? So often initiating a conversation or forming that an intimate relationship to begin with takes a lot of cross communication, which we know is the thing that is particularly difficult, right? We also know that modern dating relies a lot on apps, websites, dating sites. So if you're a person where reading and writing is a little bit of a challenge, this makes it hard to re-enter. What I can say is that, like with other things therapists do to support or friends and family, getting some support to set up that Bumble page or that duet profile, disclosing is really important, asking for what you need and how you will receive information, and just being really transparent about who you are. And then thinking about other ways to connect with a community that you might know is more open to differences in communication and leading with your best foot forward. What I will tell you is I have seen folks go out and get back on the dating scene and be pretty successful, or as successful as anyone is on the dating scene right now. So I will say it's possible, but lean on your same communication strategies and the same supports and just disclose right up front. I really believe that that's important and that is really prevalent in disability and change literature, is about just telling people what's going on to set you both up for success. Allie, did you have something to add here?
I did, yes. Although I think that all of that was fabulous and exactly what I would have said. I also want to add, I heard at the end of that question, will someone want to be with me now that I've had stroke and aphasia? And I think that's really an area that you can start working on now for when you are ready to go back into the dating scene. Is heck yes, someone will want to be with you after stroke and aphasia. Of course they will. You're an amazing human being and you have a million other things to bring to the table. So start working on that self-esteem and self-love and bring that out in yourself so that you can love someone else after you've learned to love yourself.
I love that. And I think, Allie, I was going to add that piece of it. It appears as a statement of confidence, right? And confidence is impacted by aphasia. I mean, there's not one person that I've ever worked with in my many, many, many years in the field that haven't said it, my confidence took a hit, whether they ended up, back at work or back with dating and friendships, that all of those things take a certain amount. And so I really love both of those answers. And I'm glad you clarified about disclosure, Amanda, because I think that's, people have that struggle with positions and jobs and relationships, is how much do I need to tell? Well, obviously that's your own choice, how much you want to share, but that being authentically yourself is just really huge. There was another question was about online and dating, and I thought that was a great kind of thing to bring up. So, Amanda, you had mentioned that a lot of these dating in this world right now is starts with a lot of virtual things. And one of the questions came where it said, I'm in a internet romance for the last 2.5 years. Not sure about its many turns and confusion on my end, but she talks me out of breaking up with her every time I'm not sure what to do. I don't want to abandon her or hate myself. How can I find out if she is meaningful to my life? I love the end of that. Is it how to find out if she's meaningful to my life? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think I have heard that question from folks without aphasia, because I think that is truly, and this is what I was trying to say earlier, is that relationships are hard. They're just really hard. And many of the challenges I've supported partnerships I'm working through, just, we're not really about the aphasia. It's just the aphasia was the blockade to just your point. How do I know this? So I think if the question is a question about, do you feel like you're communicating well enough or asking the right question? Like if it's a communication breakdown, or if this is a regular old romantic challenge partnership question. And if it's option one, I think that maybe you could ask for a friend or a confidant to help you maybe better craft that ask or look at some of the exchange to support you to make sure you're being really clear in understanding the nature of your relationship and you're getting your questions asked. And most importantly, getting what you need out of a partnership. If it's option B, which is just, I don't know if this is the right partner for me, what I really want to say is, if you can crack the code on knowing that, I think you would be a billionaire. And I think that is just one of the very human challenges we have in partnerships. Allie, I don't know if you have anything to add here.
Totally agree. Yep, absolutely agree with all that. Yeah. Oh, Mara, you're muted.
Got it.
There you go.
I'm so worried about the camera that I muted myself now. Yeah, I think that is definitely extends beyond those people with aphasia. And there was another question that kind of is more, and I really love this reference for the stroke .org, and I know there is some work on that on AFTD too, for those of you here that may be involved in a relationship with somebody who has primary progressive aphasia. There is some information on intimacy and such as that, but a lot of times medication comes up. And certainly whether you had a stroke or not, and medication's an issue, but with aphasia, a lot of times people have mood disturbances, they might have sadness, they might have depression. Oftentimes they are prescribed an anti-depressive drug like Lexapro. So this person asked, I need help with low sex drive since I've been taking Lexapro. We've heard it, right? That there are changes based on metabolic and medicine, pharmacological choices. So what do you guys think about that? And what would you emphasize there?
Absolutely. This is so common. And I'm sure for the stroke survivors, TBI survivors, even those with PPA in the room, your medication list is now a mile long and they all conflict and they all have new side effects. And it is very common for there to be low sex drive because of a medication, or just like Maura was saying, it could be because of some sort of change that happened to the chemicals in the brain and you're experiencing low sex drive. You might also experience from medication or from a physical impairment having the functions of sex not be there anymore. So I'll say the words erectile dysfunction, vaginal dryness. Those things can occur after stroke and TBI. And I'm here to say that after having worked with many people who have had stroke and TBI, that's normal, y'all. If you're experiencing that, that is normal. And what I would encourage you to do if you are having some sort of side effect from your medication or from the injury or illness, talk with your doctor. And, we unfortunately said you might have to be the one to bring it up because they're not going to bring it up. But I think it's a good opportunity for you to maybe practice saying what you want to say to your doctor. Maybe you can write something down to show to your doctor, something as simple as Lexapro, side effects, no. Give it to them. And, maybe there's another medication they can try for a little bit and see how that goes. But I think that opening that line of communication and advocating for your needs is really important because sex and intimacy are critical to quality of life. They are critical to relationships. So this is okay to talk about. This is important to talk about.
I love that you pointed out to Allie that you're not alone in this discussion. There are tools. Amanda spent some time on communication support. You talked about writing it down. Aphasia Recovery Connection and Lingraphica have the talk tools, which we had posted on our news section that's called Living Day to Day. And it's got all these little tabs like going to the doctor, or going to, the grocery store, or going to the bank. And the going to the doctor one really points out some of these tools that are available, and we're open to more. So, we're here to shine the light on you if you know of a tool that would be great to do that. I always love to use pictographs. I know the Aphasia Institute has a wonderful thing they call them Participix, and that's also available on our resource page where you can sign up for a free account and then find what you're looking for in terms of a description. I often, as people know who know that my mom had a stroke and had aphasia, is that I never ever went to the doctor with her unless it was an emergency. We were, on our way to, I never went without spending some time before. We brought her ID book and her information, but we had pictographs. We had pictures of the doctor. We had what questions might you have? And we would spend a half hour or so, going, is this it? Is that it? The whiteboard and the crossing out. And when we would come to questions that we finally were ready to talk about, then that empowered her to take that ownership with her doctor. And I wonder if, that could be that real push this year and into next year of us all looking at ways where we can teach people to prepare for these conversations, because the tools are out there. And so I love, Allie, that you really, said this is a conversation that you need to have, but you can't just expect, how many minutes that a doctor might be in the room with you. It might be a blink and you're like, oh, they're gone. So you want to make sure that you have all of that information out there. Great suggestion. So any other follow-up thoughts on my little rant there about preparation?
Totally agree. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We have also questions about um, the kind of the things you were talking about, Amanda, when you said like, finding where you are on that ladder, kind of identifying. Could you use something like a ladder like that to start the discussion? Like, I want to be here, we're not here. What are the things that we can do? And then to that same extent, you both talked about kind of like connections that weren't only sexual or intimacy, but created
Mm-hmm.
intimacy, like time spent together with a hobby or doing things that you enjoy. Can you speak to that about how you can kind of reconnect on those areas that might end up helping in other areas of your relationship?
Yeah, one of the things Allie and I talked about before we did this presentation, and it's just a really nice reminder that for a lot of people, if there isn't a lot of emotional intimacy, then the physical intimacy part is actually going to be really difficult or is going to be a no. So there's a bit of a prerequisite. So when you think about intimacy on a scale, and I think about using a ladder, using where you are, one, where are you now? And where are you trying to go? So are we in a, actually, all I want to do is hold your hand. That's it. Actually, what I want to do is I want a date night. I want to be wined and dined. I want chocolate covered strawberries. I want a new dress and I want to feel like a babe. And that's where you're at. And I think this is why starting with the conversation about where am I at and what am I actually looking for, and then working with your partner to say, well, I'm here, I want to get here, but what's this next small step to help us get there? Because it can feel really daunting to try to move 150 steps in a couple of weeks.
Mhm.
So, like any relationship, and I know I keep stressing this, right? Everybody I have ever met would like a change in their relationship in some way. And the first step is always, where am I at? What is the next right step? And using a scale, using a picture, using the ladder to just say, hi, I'm using this support to open this conversation is the best thing you can do to serve your partnership is maybe just having the courage to start somewhere. Allie, what would you add to this?
Absolutely agree. And I think Mara's second part was about how to build that connection if the physical or sexual part isn't there yet. And I think that's really critical too. Something that's really hard that I've found in my research is a lot of the interests and hobbies and activities that you used to do together, now maybe you can't do those things anymore because of the stroke or the aphasia. So maybe you used to love to go golfing together. Maybe you used to travel together. Maybe you used to, watch movies together. And now somewhere aphasia affects all of those things, or physical impairments affect those things. So I think that, it's kind of like you're dating again. You're finding out what you like to do together and what interests you. And you might have to try some things that you've never tried before, but that can be exciting and that can be flirtatious and that can be really bonding. So I think that if your goal is, like Amanda was saying, if your goal is, more physical intimacy, more sexual intimacy, but right now you're not connecting much at all, the first step is having that conversation, opening the door to communicate about it. And maybe the second step is finding a way that you can connect.
Yeah.
So it could just be watching a show together, making dinner together, but something
Yeah.
simple that you can accomplish first.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
great. I love that. And it also takes the roles away from person with aphasia, care partner. It just
Yes.
is like people.
Yes.
People who
Yes.
care about each other, they're just
Yes.
together.
Partners.
And
Yep.
we only have a couple more minutes, and I certainly don't want to end on a negative, but I do want to point out, we had our parenting group last night, and I know there's a lot of wonderful resources. Lauren, who does our program, and her team kind of helped us put some resources together for parenting. I put my our Battertown puppet show up on our website. So it's the thing is that many of these relationships are not just you and somebody else. It's also children, and it's in-laws, and it's all of those things. And sometimes it doesn't work. And I think we all in this field have run across families who fell apart after their stroke or brain injury. And
Mhm.
I think the accepting nature of this whole discussion has been, it's okay. It happens with relationships outside of stroke and aphasia, and it
Mhm.
happens with aphasia. And I think that we could, without having a full discussion about it, we could teach people how to fight better with aphasia,
Yeah.
or parent that, it's hard to raise a teenager, and then you raise a teenager with aphasia and somebody else takes over that, or, you get in a
Mhm.
disagreement with your spouse. And I remember one of my clients saying, I always feel like I'm putting her at a disadvantage because we used to argue so well. And so that could be a whole nother discussion, maybe another Ask the Expert.
Mhm.
Any final thoughts on that? And then anything you'd like to share to end the discussion?
I couldn't
I
agree more. There's
Mhm.
so much here. I mean, we
Yeah.
could just talk about this endlessly, and there's so much work and research and learning that we need to do in our field to understand this better. But I'm really excited by the few resources that are out there, and I'm so glad that we were able to do this and speak with some people
Too.
with aphasia here tonight.
Too.
Yeah, and I just want to encourage all of you, so we are not great at relationships as a society. We really don't like to talk about things like intimacy or sex. We really have made just the whole conversation, regardless of who you are, something really uncomfortable. So looking for resources outside of aphasia is also really helpful. Their
Yeah.
dating problems, their connection problems. There's, I want to fight better. I'm irritated because, my husband keeps putting the recycling next to the bin and not in the bin. Like, that's all just relationship stuff. So, what I also just hope you take away from this is this is this is a universal sort of challenge with one more layer, but you are really the expert at this layer.
Yes.
And
Yes.
folks like us can just patch in some of the solutions where it works, but you got this. Just start the conversation. You deserve it.
I love it so much. Thanks, Sharon. I'm glad you were here too. And I'm going to share my screen for this last section, which is the reminder that we are here. We are here to really reflect what is going on in that aphasia world in that one layer and on top. And we are so grateful to both of you for sharing your insight, your ideas, your transparency. It was just beautiful, and I'm sure we'll do much more together. I also want to thank you all, the people that were here, because as Amanda said, you are the experts. You are the ones living with aphasia and caring for people with aphasia. So keep giving us ideas, keep telling us what you want to hear. There is a way to connect with us at answers@aphasia.org if there was something you wanted to talk about. We also have a survey that we put at the very end of the webinar. And we just ask that you give us your feedback, but you're always welcome to give feedback at Answers as well. And if you did want the certificate, I see that it is off of the screen here. So if you wanted to get that professional development hour, if you could just email me at answers@aphasia.org, and I will make sure you get that. Sorry, didn't have the QR code ready for that with my camera situation. Thank you both so much. Thank you, everybody. And we hope to see you on Wednesday at 12 noon, where we have After the Expert. We'll keep talking about this. Maybe we'll bring up some new questions and conversations, and look out for the YouTube video, which will be up tomorrow. So thank you, guys. Have a great evening. It's a new day with the NAA. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.